Hello, I'm Monsignor Jim Lisante, delighted to be here on Catholic TV. I've been working in media for a long time, primarily through Fox News and Catholic TV and radio, but I want to talk about another dimension of my life. Like any priest, it all begins and ends in parish work. I've had the privilege of being a pastor at two parishes, one called St. Thomas the Apostle, another Our Lady of Lourdes. I mention that because the first parish, St. Thomas the Apostle, was my home parish. It's where I was born and raised, so to go back there and be pastor was a particular delight. Name's Lisante, which is Italian-American, but the truth is I'm James Patrick Lisante with an Irish mother, last name of McNeil. I mention that because my parents live in a house right across the street from the rectory. So when I went back there to be pastor and was pastor for 12 years, what a delight to have your folks living so close. I mention that too because while I was at St. Thomas the Apostle, 9/11 happened. And when it happened, 31 of our parishioners were killed that day in New York City. A terrible time, awful, painful, really heart-wrenching funerals that took place to celebrate the lives of these good people who had been slaughtered in that terrible, terrible tragedy, that awful terrorist attack. There was a fellow from the New York Times who wanted to cover the story of how one parish dealt with the whole challenge of burying 31 of our people who should not have died. And he followed me around through the funerals and the wakes and the whole experience. But he said at the end of writing about his story, there's a piece missing. And the piece missing is, what helps a priest to function? How does a priest cope with this tragedy, this sorrow, this pain, the emotional drain of so many people devastated by the losses of 9/11? And I said, well, I don't know what I do to cope. I have an idea of what gets me through. And he said, well, tell me. And I said, well, every night I have appointments at 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night. But at 10 o'clock at night, I stop and I go across the street to my parents' house. And there my parents, who are both in their 80s, they basically take care of their son. My mom brings out a cup of tea. My dad slices up some melon, and we all watch together reruns of Everybody Loves Raymond. And I'm telling you, that can be therapeutic for a guy who all day has been dealing with stress and tragedy and sorrow. It's a wonderful help to me to have my parents to talk to and to share the burdens. My parents matter so much to me. I mention all that because the story came out in the New York Times. And when it did, I remember saying to my parents, did you see the piece in the New York Times about the parish and about me? And my parents were kind of cool, and they said, yeah, we saw it. I said, what did you think of it? And they said, oh, it was fine. And I said, what do you mean it was fine? It was a wonderful story. It was about your son. This is the New York Times. Weren't you excited? Wasn't it great? And again, they were pretty cool and said, it was fine. It was okay. So I wondered, what's going on? Finally, I said to my mother, Mom, this was a big deal, and you're not excited by it. Why? And she said, well, we don't mind that they did a story on our son. And we don't mind that you mentioned us, but where do you get off telling the New York Times and the whole world that we're over 80 years old? I mention that because it was wonderful to see my real parents being sensitive about their age. They are great, great people. They mean the world to me. They support me. They help me to be the priest I am. All of this is my setup for what I want to tell you now. I couldn't be the man I am without Nicholas and Cecilia, my parents. They have led me in so many ways down the paths that matter in life. We're supposed to be close to our parents. It's central to who we are. They form us, they shape us, and the relationship is special, and it's intimate, it's good, it's what makes us the people we are. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about Mary, the Mother of God. There are people out there who think, well, you know, those Catholics, they're good, but there's a problem. They worship Mary. They make her the center of the universe. And one of the ways they criticize us a lot is because of our devotion to the Rosary. They say, you know, all these prayers to Mary, Hail Mary, full of grace, why don't they focus on Jesus? After all, Jesus is the Lord our God. Well, keep that in mind because that criticism is still out there. And everything I'm saying, by the way, is based on a wonderful book by Dr. Vincent Barata called The Rosary is Alive. It's a great resource I hope you'll pick up. Now, in my parish, I probably celebrate about 150 weddings a year. And it's a wonderful thing, but there are people who can't always get to the pastor. Now let me tell you what happens when people want to get to me. What they do very often is call a woman named Cecilia, my mom. And I'll go home for a bite to eat or I'll talk to her on the phone. And she'll say, listen, by the way, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Mr. and Mrs. McGillicuddy, whoever she ran into in the local Pathmark superstore, they were saying that their daughter wants you to marry them next year and they haven't been able to reach you, or they only got your secretary, or they're unable to make contact. Jimmy, do us this favor. They're great people. They've been parishioners for a long time. Would you please call them and tell their daughter you'll do their wedding? Now, the truth is, I'm not crazy about my mother taking messages from me. But I got to tell you something. I've never said no. If Mom asks me to do it, I do it because she's my mom. She's part of my heart, my soul, the fiber of my being. That's a special relationship. I wouldn't trade it for the world. So when people say, you know, those Catholics are super into Mary, the truth is, we are. She's the mother of Jesus. And if I want to get to Jesus, doesn't it make sense to go to Mary and to Mary come to her son? Doesn't it make sense that that special bond that exists between, I hope, you and your parents, certainly between me and my parents, is also a bond that should bond Mary and Jesus? So we say to Jesus through Mary. And one of the best ways to do that is through recitation of the Rosary. The Rosary gives us not only entree to Our Lady, but to her wonderful Son. People want to get in touch with Monsignor Jim Lisante, they contact Mom or Dad. People want to get in touch with Jesus, there's a way. And that way is to Jesus through Mary. I'm Monsignor Jim Lisante. You're watching Catholic TV. Thanks for listening.